Stability launches an audio model, Adobe releases Firefly AI tools to the public, and why Goldman Sachs says there's no AI bubble. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown Brief, all the AI headline news you need in around 5 minutes. We begin today with one of my favorite categories in the entire artificial intelligence space, which is the new text-to-audio, or really more specifically, text-to-music space. Now, this is an area that has lagged perhaps a little bit behind text-to-image and text-to-video, but is really starting to come on strong. Over the last few months, we've gotten Google's Music LM, which remains in a research and testing version. Same with Meta's AudioCraft, which also is mostly available for testing and playing with right now, and doesn't really have an application to go along with it. At the same time, you're seeing more startups like Cassette AI who are trying to bring this type of experience to the general public. And of course, as you know, although Stability AI is constantly releasing new models, they're almost always really strong. Now, Stable Audio is being released in a slightly different way and a slightly more advanced state than Google LM and Meta's AudioCraft. The announcement post writes, Stable Audio is a first-of-its-kind product that uses the latest generative AI techniques to deliver faster, higher-quality music and sound effects via an easy-to-use web interface. And by the way, that web interface is, of course, what makes it different. Stability AI offers a basic free version of Stable Audio, which can be used to generate and download tracks of up to 45 seconds, and a Pro subscription, which delivers 90-second tracks that are downloadable for commercial purposes. Now, in terms of some of the details, Stability writes that this model was trained using music and metadata from AudioSparks, which is a music library that includes over 800,000 sounds. The blog continues, Stable Audio is the first music generation product enabling the creation of high-quality 44.1 kHz music for commercial use via latent diffusion. The latent diffusion architecture uses audio conditioned on text metadata as well as audio file duration and start time, allowing for control over the content and length of the generated audio. The Turing Post also points out that Stability gets much faster inference time compared to raw audio because they heavily downsample the latent representation of the audio. What that means is that Stable Audio can render 95 seconds of stereo audio in less than 1 second on an NVIDIA A100. But of course, this is really all about what it sounds like, so let's look at the samples they gave. The first is trance, Ibiza, beach, sun, 4 a.m., progressive, synthesizer, 909, dramatic chords, choir, euphoric, nostalgic, dynamic flowing. The second is warm, soft hug, comfort, low synths, twinkle, wine and leaves, ambient, peace, relaxed water. The third is drum solo. Sometimes the simplest prompts are the best ones. Now, I think that there are going to be a ton of uses for this. My guess, in fact, is that the first iterations of it aren't actually used as much for people producing end-to-end musical tracks, as much as they are used to produce new generative audio as the soundtrack for other multimedia creations. In other words, I think you're going to see a lot of Stable Audio soundtracks for Runway and Pika Labs generated videos. But who knows? Certainly the speculation is cooking. For example, Brian Romley writes, Stability AI just announced Stable Audio, a new AI product that can generate high-quality music and sound effects from simple text prompts. As I said, by 2039, most of the music you listen to will be tailored AI music designed to or by you. Next up, we move over to another set of generative AI tools that have now become more broadly available. Earlier this year, people got really excited about some of Adobe's new tools that are part of their larger Firefly generative AI suite. The most notable one, of course, was Generative Fill. Generative Fill is, of course, a tool by which a person can take an image and make a specific change using natural language to just a part of an image. So, for example, you can put a dog in a patch of grass. You can also expand a photo, and this is something that people were doing quite a bit when it first was released. But when it was first released, it was only available in beta. That meant you had to download, for example, the test version of Photoshop to use it, and that has now changed. Adobe's Firefly AI tools are now generally available to pretty much all of their users with the exception of places like China where there are laws that prohibit those models from general release. On top of that, Adobe is also launching a standalone Firefly web app. That will give people the ability to use some of these generative AI capabilities without having to subscribe to the specific Adobe Creative Suite applications. And one that you have to think many businesses will be excited about is that Adobe Firefly for Enterprise is also now widely available. Now, one of the things that businesses were excited about with this release is the fact that because Adobe's generative AI image model is trained on Adobe stock and public domain content, theoretically it's much safer from copyright claims, which is something that enterprises are worried about given how many lawsuits are currently flying around based on how different AI companies have trained their models. What's more, Adobe has also said that they will foot the bill if a company is hit with a copyright complaint. Now, no doubt there is lots and lots of excitement around new AI tools, and that excitement, as we well know, has extended to the stock market, where AI stocks have led a rally this year in spite of so many negative macro factors, from bank crises to increased interest rates to geopolitical instability. And this, of course, has had many questioning whether AI stocks were already in a bubble. However, at least for now, Goldman Sachs' answer is that no, they are not. On September 11th, they published a report, Why AI Stocks Aren't in a Bubble. Chief Global Equity Strategist at Goldman Sachs Research, Peter Oppenheimer, writes that the valuations of stocks leading the market are, quote, not as stretched as in previous periods. He says, quote, we believe we are still in the relatively early stages of a new technology cycle that is likely to lead to further outperformance. One of the things that the report points out is that tech stock valuations have gone up this year despite rising rates, which is the opposite of what happened last year, as we saw a significant sensitivity to rising rates in the prices of technology stocks that had gone up quite a bit in the previous couple of years. To put some numbers around it, the blog post summing up the report writes, technology sector valuations are certainly high by historic standards. Compared with the 10-year median and range, the current price-to-earnings ratio for the U.S. tech sector is right at the top. But that's not the whole story. The 7 biggest U.S. companies seen as leaders in the race to commercialize generative AI technology have an average PE of 25. That compares with a PE of 52 for the biggest companies at the peak of the internet bubble. What's more, they write, the current crop of technology leaders are already very profitable and generate cash, meaning they are investing at a high rate even in an environment of elevated interest rates and borrowing costs. Their cash as a percentage of market capitalization is double what companies had during the internet bubble. Their return on equity and average margins are also nearly double what was seen during the 1990s run-up. Says Oppenheimer, this has made these companies relatively defensive in terms of their revenues and earnings. TLDR, according to Goldman Sachs, we are still at the beginning and not yet in overheated territory. And yet valuations are certainly climbing. Bloomberg reports on a new round for drone startup Shield AI, through which they will raise $150 million at a $2.5 billion valuation. Now, of course, one of the big themes that we have talked about on this show is how, as politicians hem and haw about how AI should develop or not, the U.S. military and other militaries around the world are absolutely racing forward with autonomous technology and new AI-powered weapons and defense systems. Now, it's worth noting that Shield AI is not some Johnny-come-lately, trend-jumping company. It was started all the way back in 2015, and earlier this year announced a partnership with Boeing. Another example of AI finding its way into big business comes from EY. The services and consulting company has spent $1.4 billion developing an AI platform that includes developing its own LLM, EY.AI EYQ. Now, this follows after competitors and peers KPMG said in July that they plan to spend $2 billion on AI and cloud services over the next 5 years. And in the same month, Accenture announced a $3 billion investment plan to expand its investment in AI as well. Now, in my estimation, far from being just a jump on the trend kind of move, these major consulting firms actually have a really sensible use case for custom or at least customized LLMs that take advantage of their incredible trove of data. If you think about how the general consulting contract works, all of the data and information and learnings are siloed off from the teams that didn't work on it. This creates an opportunity where you could theoretically use an LLM and other AI technology to give people across the company access to better information and learning from the collective experience of the company rather than just the projects that they previously worked on themselves. Now, how exactly that will impact their work, whether it will result in better performance or lower costs, or simply advanced capabilities, remains to be seen. But on a base level, I think it makes a lot of sense for these big consulting firms to be investing in AI the way that they are. And so, friends, the AI march continues on. There is going to keep being lots to talk about. But for now, that is going to do it for the AI Breakdown Brief. I'll be back soon with the main AI Breakdown.